Good afternoon or good morning if you're joining us from the West Coast today. Thank you so much for joining us for the power of a private social network. We're excited to share some insights with you today regarding social media and the use of a private social network. Today's webinar is brought to you by Liaison. Liaison is a company that serves higher education with solutions from first interest to first day on campus. We have about 300 employees focusing solely on enrollment management. We currently serve different parts of the funnel for over 5,000 programs on over 800 campuses across the United States. Some of you may be familiar with Liaison from our centralized application services, or CASs, along with the decision workflow tool that comes with it, which is WebAdmit. We do focus on all areas of that funnel. Here's a traditional funnel and some of the services that we provide to get students through that. What we're going to be focusing on today is a little bit further down in that funnel and related to yield and paying attention to students after they've been accepted and perhaps even deposited to make sure that they indeed show up for that first day on campus. Just a couple housekeeping things before we introduce our guest speakers. We are recording this webinar, and we will have a link available to the recorded version along with a PDF of the slides. So do not feel like you have to be capturing screenshots during the webinar today. We'll also be taking questions, and we'll talk about that right after I go over the agenda with you. My name is Suzanne Sharp. If you have attended some of our webinars before, you may be familiar with me. I am currently the Executive Director for Enrollment Management Consulting with Liaison. I come from the higher ed side. I was a former Vice President for Enrollment Management and have worked in higher ed for over 20 years in various aspects and at both public and private institutions. I'm very pleased to have with us today a couple of guest speakers from Franklin Pierce University. And I'd like to take a minute to have our guest speakers introduce themselves, and then we'll tell you a little bit about Franklin Pierce. So, Braylon.
Hi, everyone. My name is Braylon O'Toole. I'm an Assistant Director of Admissions at Franklin Pierce University. This is my second year with the university, and this January will be my second year leading the Perch, our personal social media site. And I am very happy to have with me one of our students who I've had the pleasure of working with in the Perch and in the admissions office, Megan.
Hi everyone, my name is Megan Heaney. I'm currently a senior biology major at Franklin Pierce, and I actually got to use the Perch as a potential student my senior year of high school, and now I currently work as a student ambassador for the site. So I get to interact with potential students and help answer their questions. So I've gotten to see the use of this social media on both sides of the spectrum.
Great. We're so excited to have you here, Megan and Braylon. I'm very excited to see the different perspectives that you have on managing that private social network from a lot of different perspectives as well. So, and Megan, it looks like you're involved in a lot of other things too. You did have a long list of things that I couldn't fit on here, but you're also a peer leader and a tour guide, and I think you have a leadership role in a sorority as well. Is that right?
Yes, we have an honor society on campus.
An honor society, okay.
Health Science Honor Society, yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So both Braylon and Megan join us from Franklin Pierce University. Braylon, tell us a little bit about Franklin Pierce.
Sure. So Franklin Pierce is a small liberal arts college. We are located in Rindge, New Hampshire, so the southwest corner of the state. We have about 1,400 undergrad students, and we are Division II in athletics. We have over 30 majors, our largest ones being health science, several business programs, education, and we also have several continuing education programs with Masters of Education, Masters of Business Administration, and our Doctorate of Physical Therapy program. Those are our largest draws. We've been using our private social media network for, I think this will be the 6th year we've had it, and we've seen some great success with it so far.
Great. Well, we're, again, happy to have both of you here with us, and it's always good to partner with Franklin Pierce University. So today's agenda, we're going to focus just on kind of We've got 5 main points here. We're going to talk about where people put the recruiting efforts, why social media and maybe a private social network could be important. We're going to talk about what is a private social network, and really hear from Braylyn and Megan about the Perch, which is what they have named the private social network at Franklin Pierce University. We'll also take questions, and we have a little invitation for a demo for you all to do at the end as well. If you would like to submit a question, there is on your GoToWebinar panel, there is a section there that you can answer or submit questions on, and you can submit those at any time during the webinar. We will likely address the questions at the end if we have time. And if we don't get to all the questions, we'll certainly be following up with people afterwards. I'd like to thank Mike Martin, who is also on the phone with us today. He's sort of driving the mechanics of this, and he will be facilitating our questions later. He'll answer quick ones during the webinar as well if you just have some quick technical things or things that are going on that you want to know quickly. So please feel free to submit some questions. So let's talk about where most people put their recruitment efforts. This is our traditional, what we call the enrollment funnel. I think the funnel is always going to be there. I think it appears in different ways, and it sort of moves, it might move around a little bit, and how we reach people and do our outreach has certainly changed. I worked in admissions in the early 90s, and the outreach then was certainly different along with the outreach as well. But it's pretty common for people to really focus a lot of effort on that prospecting through the inquiry and getting everyone to apply. And so we put a lot of effort into there, and what we're seeing now is a trend to more people trying to focus here. What we're learning as less people are going to college and the competition is up, people are applying at multiple schools and they're being accepted at multiple schools, and one person can't really go to multiple schools at the same time if they're applying for financial aid especially. So we have to still compete for those students. We have to still be nurturing the students that we've admitted, and even the ones who have maybe confirmed that they're coming with a deposit. Many of you may be on with undergraduate institutions and have a May 1st deadline of that deposit is still refundable. And I know from working in admissions, there's still summer melt that happens. There's still people in the summer that change their mind. And so the question becomes, what are you doing to really engage your students who have been accepted to your institution and maybe even deposited? Maybe 20 years ago, it was, yay, they're coming. And that's not really the case anymore. And so we need to put some effort in there. And that's where social media can really help us. Now, as you know, social media is important at all the stages. So, you know, a lot of people have social media sites out there that are attracting students for the first time. They're engaging with them at the inquiry stage, et cetera. But what we're going to be talking about today is a private social network, and that comes into play more at the admitted and confirmed stage, a little more focused and selective as far as engaging students. As most of you know, there's a lot of social media outlets out there. Here's just a kind of a graphic showing all of the different ones that are available. And they continue to be used. I think they kind of come in and out. There's some that go up and some that go down. Just some data that we have here from, this is from the Study Break site, Study Break College Media site. They surveyed about 260 college students to find out what types of social media they're using. And at this point, this was actually in 2014, Facebook is still pretty high, Twitter's up there. There's these other ones sort of kind of honing in, and this is why social media is important. I think many times our target audience is on social media, and so we can't really turn our back to it. We can't pretend it doesn't perhaps exist, and so we need to be aware of who's using it and which ones are they using, and which ones can your school use. You probably can't use all of them. That's a whole other topic. It's talking about managing social media, but how do you manage that, and which ones are you going to focus on? This is another data point I thought was interesting. It was from University Business in 2011, and this had to do with high school seniors reporting how much they're using web electronic digital sources. And really, if you look, they're watching YouTube, they're using social media to search for scholarships, they're reading posts about schools. So they're looking at a lot of different sites as they're going through that college selection process. What we're focusing on today and what we're talking about is what we call a private social network. So it's not anything that you're going to necessarily find out there that's more public or has open access. And so some of you may be asking, well, what is a private social network? And I've asked Braylin if she can sort of give us a general overview of what is a private social network.
So a private social network, first and foremost, is a way for potential students to connect in a way that's more exclusive than those mass sites like Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. All of those sources have a way of creating groups, but they're not exclusive. Yes, it may be geared towards a certain class or a certain school, but there really is no monitoring, and there's no way to distinguish who is really a member. And for us, what the private social network has done is it's controllable in that it's only for accepted and enrolled students. So there's that sense of comfort in that you know who is going to be on the other end. It's a very exclusive group of students.
Right, and that makes sense. And I like what you said too about it being it's more exclusive. You know, you have to be invited, and you have to be you have to be accepted to be invited to participate on the Perch. And I know you're going to go into more detail on what you guys have done with your private social network in a little while. But some of you may be asking, why private? And I think it is that exclusive, the exclusiveness of it that Braylin mentioned, but also it's when you look at higher education, it's a group of common people that are coming together in a secure environment to do things like find roommates and connect with people who are like them, and starting to get people making friends with other people. Where do the students want to go to school? Well, if you're a high school senior and you're looking at different colleges, you typically are going to want to go to a school where you have friends, or you feel like you have friends and you feel like you have a connection. So much of it is fit and so much of it is connection. And so private can really give you that. The other thing we need to be aware of is, and here's some headlines recently from the New York Times and think pieces, Generation Z is coming. This is a new generation of students, and their social media habits are going to be a little bit different as well. Now, they're still using social media, and this is where we can get into finding all kinds of data about what social media sites are people using. This one was interesting to me because it's showing sort of that shift. If you look at the pink bar is the most recent one, and you can see, you know, that Twitter and Facebook is going down a little bit. Instagram is going up. Tumblr's kind of holding steady, not a whole lot of movement there. But it's interesting to see the trends as they're changing when we have a new generation coming in and how they're using it. Again, they're still using social media, so that's important to them. But they also are a little more savvy about not wanting to be tracked. This is from a slideshow by Sparks and Honey that did a whole presentation on Generation Z. If you Google Sparks and Honey Gen Z, you can pull up that slide presentation. It's worth a look. But they also indicated from another source here, the Facebook social ads, that 25% of the 13 to 17-year-olds left Facebook in 2014, which I found very interesting. But I also asked Megan about this the other day, and Megan, you said this sort of coincides with your own experience on Facebook. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like in high school, Facebook was new, and it was kind of like the first of its kind, so everyone was on Facebook. And then as I got into college, all these new and wonderful and really unique other forms of social media started to emerge, like Snapchat and Instagram and Tumblr and other sources. So I feel like people still use Facebook, like they still have them, but they use it in combination with other sources of social media as well, like using them together. So everyone still has it, but it's a little less prevalent than it was a few years ago.
Right, makes sense. And part of it is just that there's so many new toys out there for everyone to be playing with and connecting with people on. And so I can see that would definitely make a difference as well. But I think the private makes some sense. You know, people are definitely open to using other sources of social media, especially ones that might be exclusive to them. And we looked at the data. We have obviously a private social network that Liaison offers that can be integrated into a marketing platform and CRM. But we looked at some of our schools. We just picked out 3 clients, and here's some data that we found fairly interesting. Of all the students who enrolled for 2015, an average of 73% were PSN users, which is the private social network. What's really interesting here to me, and I'm glad that we're going to hear from Braylon and Megan here, client 1, they actually told me I could disclose, that is Franklin Pierce, and they have the highest percentage there. So of their students who enrolled for 2015, 82% of them were private social network users. Now that contrasts with client 3. Client 3, I happen to know, is a client who launched the private social network for the first time at their school just last winter. And so you can see that what happens using a private social network for 6 years, I think also lends some following to it as well, because that number is going up. I think a year ago it was at 80%, and so it's continuing to increase. Overall, 73% of the students across all 3 of these clients who enrolled at the schools were private social network users. Some other general observations as we gleaned through some of the data here is that, of course, the one that we had there is that the majority were the PSN users, even in cases where the PSN users may have been a minority of the accepted students. Also, what was interesting and I know Braylon, I asked Braylon to confirm some of this for me as well, the percentage of withdrawn students was remarkably lower among the PSN users as compared to the non-PSN users. And that's probably due to the connection. They're making friends, they're connecting, they're starting to belong before they even get to campus. And so it's harder to maybe withdraw. You think a little harder about it. And then a portion of the students became active on the PSN only after being designated as enrolled, which usually in our system means they've deposited. So they've committed to going to the school. And they continue that use through orientation. And I know, Braylon, you said how you leave your private social network on for just a little while after they get to campus. Is that right?
We continue to run the Perch through about the first week of classes. So after they've had their orientation and that, first initial meetings, for somewhat of a comfort for a lot of these students, because they've connected with a lot of their classmates already on this site, and maybe they haven't yet reached out on other social media networks. So it's kind of our way of transitioning them, and hopefully they're at that point in that first week able to reach out to other resources on campus and transition into other social media aspects after the Perch.
Right. Fantastic. So what we want to do now is I really want us to hear more from you, Braylon, and then also from Megan about your private social network. And so let me turn it over to you, Braylon, if you can kind of give us an overview. You sort of gave us an example of what is a private social network, but tell us about the Perch.
Sure. So the Perch is Franklin Pierce University's private social network. Our mascot is Rocky the Raven, so that's where we get the Perch name tag. For us, we've had this for, I believe this will be the 6th year we've used this private social network, and for us it's really integrated into everything we do, especially reaching out to accepted and enrolled students. We launch our Perch in January, so for students who have already been accepted, they'll receive additional information, and for new acceptances, January moving forward through the rest of the season, we'll send them this information. We reach out via email, like Megan mentioned, but we also will send physical mail as well. This is actually a perfect example. They get a letter in the mail that's demonstrated here, and it actually folds out into this big poster. So we really build it up as this great resource for students to connect. And what we find for our students is that they may be a little timid at first, but that's where our student ambassadors come into play. We have some really fantastic student ambassadors, Megan being one of them, and I think they make the Perch a really great environment so that these students have a way of reaching out to potential students who have been in their shoes, who have gone through some great experiences here, and to really get a great feel of what it's like to be here and take away some of that anxiety that comes with going to school for the first time.
Right. I love that it's a comfortable, it's a comfortable space for them. That they're into social media. This sort of just dissects it down into a manageable area for them. But tell us a little bit about the management of this from your side and what your role is, what other people on your team, how they use it. How does it all come together?
Sure. So I am the administrator on the Perch. So I have my own page, but it's very minimal. And I do my absolute best to keep my interactions on the Perch as to a minimum. It's really for the students. And it's really for the student ambassadors to run and to manage. These students don't want to hear from faculty and staff. They want to hear from their potential classmates. So from an administration standpoint, we try and interact on the Perch as little as possible. Maybe I'll post something about upcoming events just to make sure that they're getting those notifications regularly. Or if there's someone who has indicated that they really want to talk to someone in residential life, I may post a contact. But more often than not, I'll have my students do that. So it's coming from a friendly face and, someone who's here and has maybe had similar experiences.
Right. How many ambassadors do you have, Braylon?
It depends on the year, but usually I like to have at least 6 student ambassadors. We pull them from various, groups around campus. Fortunately for us, we have some really fantastic student assistants and student tour guides here in our admissions office. So frequently they are already students that we have a relationship with in our office. We try and have students that are diverse across majors and extracurricular interests so that, hopefully there's enough diversity so students feel that they're not all talking to, health science majors who are only interested in soccer. We want it to cover as many of our extracurricular involvement opportunities as possible so that they can really explore it and get a great idea of all the possibilities that are open to them at Franklin Pierce. Great.
And what is the role that your undergrad admissions counselors play? How do they benefit from this, or are they in there at all? Are they talking to the ambassadors? What's the benefit for them?
Sure. So our student ambassadors, they each have their own page, and they'll have a bio and they'll talk a little bit about themselves, and then they also each run their own set of additional pages related to their academic and other interests. So, we'll have them start a page and say, this is what I've done here at Franklin Pierce. It's been a great experience. Is anyone else interested in this? And do you have any questions? And they also will interact with each other. So their walls on the Perch act kind of like Facebook in that you can post on an individual's wall instead of on a page. So our student ambassadors do a great job of starting to interact with each other and then also welcoming, our first arrivals to the Perch. So they'll write on, new arrivals page, welcome to the Perch, we're so glad you're here, let me know if you have any questions. And some of these potential students who are joining the Perch are familiar with some of our student ambassadors because they've had them as tour guides and they've visited campus before. So it really adds a great dynamic to that, and that, they're already maybe a familiar face, and that this person is already reaching out to me, trying to help me transition into this next stage, and hopefully take away any of the hesitation they may have about asking questions.
Mm-hmm. That's great. That's great. So I've got some other screenshots that we've taken from the Perch. Of course, this, to protect some privacy, we've blurred out some of the names here, but not necessarily the conversations. I'd like to shift the conversation over to Megan. And Megan, if you can maybe tell us what we're looking at on the screen now, but then also tell us about your experience as a high school student with kind of your process of looking at Franklin Pierce and then leading up to the Perch.
Yeah, of course. So these are just some conversations that we've screenshotted that are from past years of the Perch. And as far as my college search went as a senior in high school, Franklin Pierce was the last school that I applied to, and it was the first one I heard back from, so that was really significant for me. And about a month after my acceptance, I received an email with a link to the Perch. And it was also the only school with a private social network like this, so it was really helpful for me to have that outside connection to be able to connect with current students and other potential students. And I think the great thing about the Perch for me when I was in high school was I was very quiet and shy and reserved, so it was very easy for me to connect from the comfort of my home behind my computer screen. So I think it's really great that this type of media is helpful for introverts and extroverts. But mainly I found the Perch to be helpful for me as a potential student, that I was able to connect with current students and ask them questions about their current experience and how they liked it there, but also I was able to connect with other potential students that were still making up their mind in their decision about college as well.
And Megan, you said that this is the only school that had this type of a mechanism for you to start communicating with other students, of all the ones schools that you applied to and were accepted to?
Yeah, this was the only one that had a network specifically for accepted students. So right off the bat, you already have something in common with the students that are on the site with you. You've all been accepted there. Right.
So very good. And then what's interesting, Megan, about your experience and why we're so happy to have you here with us today is that you then later came to become one of the ambassadors on the site. And I know this is a screenshot that you shared with us, but I'd like for you to talk through, tell us about moving to the experience as a student ambassador for the Perch and what it was like to sort of switch sides.
Yeah, so my role as a student ambassador was mainly to engage and welcome the students that were joining the Perch, whether this was writing on their wall or answering questions for them. We really, as student ambassadors, just wanted to get them excited about their acceptance and, be there as a support system and be able to answer any questions that they had about Pierce and share our experiences with them. And we actually got to have a Perch meetup at one of our open houses in the winter. So any students that were attending the open house that were part of the Perch could come and meet us in person. So that was a really cool opportunity to be able to connect with them in person after talking to them over the Perch. But really, it was mainly just to make them feel comfortable and give them an outlet where they could ask questions. And it was more asking questions to peers. It's not really contacting an advisor, an admissions counselor. It's really more of a comfortable environment, I think.
Great. I bet you were a fantastic ambassador because you had the experience on the other side too. And so you sort of knew what it was like as a prospective student to come onto that site. So I love how, the screenshot that we're looking at here kind of goes into what we're going to talk about next. It's showing, I think, some of these different common interests that people can have. I'm seeing the athletic side over here. The structure of this, I think you told me, Megan, it reminded you a little bit of Facebook, how it works and how you get in there and navigate. Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely. Everyone has their own individual profiles. You can fill out interests, majors, athletics, anything like that.
Okay, fantastic. And maybe Braylon, back to you guys, or Megan, either one of you, but I've screenshotted, this is not necessarily from your site, but some of the different forums that you have. I think you said majors, you said athletics, maybe interests. What are some of the ways people are connecting on the Perch?
So, like you said, it's similar to Facebook, where students can search other students based on academic interests or extracurricular interests, and they actually can link their Facebook to our private social network. So they can search for other students that are also biology majors, and they can search for other students who listed, baseball as their interest. So it's nice, not only are there all these options to explore new interests, but you can connect with students that share your current interests. And Megan was a fantastic student ambassador for us on the Perch, and she ran several different pages, and she can talk a little bit more about the specific pages that kind of fell to her responsibility. Megan, I don't know if you want to touch on those at all.
I bet you had a biology one.
Yeah, so I just, yes, I did. So, yeah, I just tried to make a page for everything that I was involved in I made one for the rugby team, biology major, made one for peer leading, which is an orientation group for freshmen. So really, whatever questions they had, they could look in those categories and kind of be matched up with other students in that category, or they could observe and kind of see the conversation play along as other students ask questions.
Now, Megan, could you see if students were, maybe they hadn't quite joined one of those discussions yet, but they're watching them? Can you tell when people are looking at them too? Or not?
I can chime in. You can't see who's looking at them, but you can see who else is on the Perch.
Okay.
So
okay.
Everyone, you can see who's joined and logged in, and who's uploaded a photo, and you can see the total number of members, but you can't necessarily see who has seen your wall or your post, but we definitely, all of our student ambassadors are notified when anyone posts on their wall or comments on a discussion that they've started.
Okay, okay. And talk a little, Braylyn, I think I just switched over to the roommate one, and we were very intrigued when we talked to someone else from Franklin Pierce over the summer too, that the finding roommates area was real popular. And I think he had some data that residential life was really grateful that people were connecting and finding roommates on here. Is that still working out that way?
Yes, it is. So I think it was about, I'd say 20 to 30% of our students coming in were already had a roommate selected. So whether it was reaching out to potential teammates or just finding someone based on common interests, and the Perch is a big part of that. We can't designate for sure how many of those students met through the Perch, but seeing as this year was our highest number of accepted and enrolled students participating on the Perch, as well as our highest number of enrolled yielded students on the Perch, we can definitely contribute some of that matching roommate success to this personal social network.
Great, fantastic. It's always, and that was one of my questions too, is obviously Res Life sort of benefits from it. It's a forum for them, and even student services. We start with making those connections even before they get here. But I'm guessing too that even other people who work in your office, the admissions team, the the staff that you have, what is their role? I know that they're probably not in the Perch participating because you want to keep it student directed. But would they tell you they get some good information from there or from the student ambassadors that help them to connect with their prospective students?
Yeah, so we actually, we rely heavily on our student ambassadors in the sense of we have one professional administrator on the Perch, but we have, several student ambassadors. So they would come to us with outside questions. They would say, Megan would stop in my office and said, I have a student on the Perch who asked me about, who do I talk to about residential life? I have a question about my housing, and maybe students have, a medical need and they weren't sure who to connect with, so they're asking, these our current students on the Perch. So it was kind of a go-between for us. So our student ambassadors would come to the assistant and associate directors here at Franklin Pierce, and maybe it was someone from our area, and they said, they really wanted to visit, but they couldn't make open house. Can you reach out to them? So it did prompt some additional outreach through the admissions office. But more than that, it was students that we found were still on the fence. This is a really great tool for us for students that were still in the deciding phase, and obviously a high percentage of the students on the Perch were decided and enrolled and really excited, and I think that kind of excitement builds and grows, and I think it helps some students that may have been a little more undecided when they join the Perch to see what these other students are excited about, what they're looking forward to here, and to hear the great stories of our current students to kind of solidify their final decision.
Right. No, that's a great story. It's a great resource, and I love that it's primarily student-run. So sounds like you have a very nice balance there. Talk a little. I think we talked a little bit the other day. We're certainly, as we talk about private social networks, not advocating that you go private and nothing else is out there. And I know we talked the other day too. what do you each see as sort of the trends of students? They're connecting on here, but I think you said they're moving over into other social media sites from here.
Oh, definitely. You know, the students nowadays are so tech savvy that you can't just try and reach them through one social media source. It has to be across multiple platforms. And for us, this is actually a way for us to promote our other platforms. We have the Perch, but they're able to link it to Facebook and join the class of 2019 Facebook group. And then we also have our Twitter and our Instagram. Instagram, like you mentioned, is really growing with our new incoming students. So we're able to promote those other areas of social media where students are finding different ways to express themselves, and we're trying to reach them across all these different platforms, because maybe one student is more active on Instagram and they're not working so much on their Facebook and their Twitter. So then we can reach a student in the platform that they want to communicate on.
Right. Fantastic.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. And Megan, I do have one more question for you. Since you've really been involved with the Perch for like 5 years. What's kind of the most profound, or what stands out the most, or what has impacted you the most about the Perch?
Yeah, so definitely the most significant experience I've had on the Perch came when I was a potential student using it as a source. And I was a couple weeks into using it, so I felt a little more comfortable, and I saw that other students were writing on potential students' walls, asking what they thought about Pierce and if they were coming here. So I took the initiative to write on one girl's wall. Her name was Meg, and I was like, oh, cool, another Meg. And I think it's always easier for students to connect with students that have commonalities. So I saw that she had the same name as me, so I wrote on her wall. And we ended up talking. We added each other on Facebook, and we actually got to meet in the summer at one of the student orientation days for students that were committed to going to Pierce. So we got to meet up in the summer, and then the first day we moved in, we got together, and we ended up rooming with each other second semester freshman year. And now as a senior, we share a townhouse together. So our initial contact was actually through the Perch, and throughout our 4 years here, we've gotten a room with each other. So that was definitely pretty significant for me.
Yeah, that's gonna be with you the rest of your life, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yep.
Definitely.
Sounds like a bestie, huh? So great.
Yes.
Well, thank you guys so much. What we're going to do now, and we have some wrap up as well, but we're curious in the audience. What we want to do is Mike is going to go ahead and launch a poll, but we're curious, what types of social media do you all use to engage students specifically after the accepted stage? So not looking at sort of the general pages that you have, but what do you purposefully have to engage the students? We've got a couple different categories, things that are more text-based like Facebook and Twitter, and then of course these new ones that are popping up that are more image-based or photo-based. Or maybe you have nothing. Maybe you already have a private social network, or maybe you'd like to learn even more about a private social network. But you can check all that apply, because I know some of you are probably, other than using nothing, you might use different channels here. So Mike, can we go ahead and launch the poll? Are you guys seeing the poll on your screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Fantastic. And we'll leave it open for about a minute. And remember, you can choose all that apply, and we will share the results as soon as we launch the poll or close the poll. It'll give us an opportunity for Mike to pop up the results. All right, Mike, are we doing well on getting responses in?
We've got quite a few.
Awesome. Okay.
Okay, we're at about the 1 minute mark, and I'm going to close it.
Okay. Fantastic. Looks like you just closed it. And now we're going to see the results. All right, lots of people using those text-based ones. Okay, fantastic. 44% using image-based. 8 are not using anything, maybe looking for something. Oh, and okay, interesting. Some people do have a private social network already. So very good, very good. Thank you all for participating and sort of giving us some data on what you're using right now and maybe what you might be interested in moving in towards the future. So, all right, I think I can click back over. Is the screen back to me now, Mike?
Yes.
Okay, so we're looking at reviewing some of the key points here. So just as a recap, and Braylon and Megan, you know, chime in anytime here, but really need a reminder to put time into nurturing those accepted and deposited students. It's not like it was when we had a whole bunch of people going to school and they weren't applying to as many. We still need to really focus in on that part of the funnel and making sure that the students choose you. Social media is still big. It's still out there. There's different forms of it. We need to, you know, stay up to date with what the students are using. And it definitely is a factor in students making decisions on where they're going to go to school. We definitely are advocates of a private social network. You've heard some good stories today from Braylon and Megan at Franklin Pierce about what the Perch has done for them. You've seen some of the data about how it has increased, how there's definitely a correlation there between the number of students who arrived on campus who were also involved in the private social network. And just a reminder too that it's supposed to complement the social media channels that you have, not necessarily not replace it. And I think you heard both Braylon and Megan share how they use other sources as well. So any other final key points, Braylon or Megan, that you want to add?
For Franklin Pierce, this has been so successful because of our student ambassadors. We really rely on them a lot to communicate because, like you said, in the top part of that funnel is where you're doing those mass communications and you're trying to get that, you know, base information out to students. Now they know about your school, they've probably visited, they have some experience, they know what programs you offer, but now they're looking for a more personal touch and a more informal touch, and that's what for us is a big part of the private social network, is it adds that more informal student-to-student communication that they're really looking for instead of coming from a professional staff member.
Right. No, I love the student-to-student, and I think that's so key for all of our clients in making their private social networks be productive and really work. And you guys have obviously done a fantastic job of doing that at Franklin Pierce. So,
well, thank you. We couldn't have done it without you.
well, thank you for that too. So, just a reminder, Liaison, we certainly promote a private social network, but it's one piece of the puzzle. You know, there's a variety of solutions from first interest to first day. We like to have an integrated and automated approach. This is one of my favorite slides when I was actually in admissions on the other side working in higher education, and I saw this slide from the company, and it really resonated with me of all the things that we need to do to reach a prospective student. And these are just a few components. You know, we have the system, and Franklin Pierce is one of our clients who has the full integrated system along with the private social network. You'll see the social networks are still important here. They're part of this. The private social network just a little bit further down the funnel for that exclusive group for people to be connecting. But we love the integration that this has with everybody. And with that, we would like to, before we field some questions, would like to invite you, if you would like to see how an integrated marketing approach works, we have a site called myviewbookdemo.com. It takes you to a form fill for a fictitious university called Watertown University. And if you fill out that form fill as if you were a prospective student, you can then see what it's like to receive materials from us. We have different channels of communicating. I think you've heard from Braylon and Megan both. You have to hit people with a lot of different channels these days, and this is going to give you an example of that. It'll also give you your own personal URL, your PURL, and that will have some information too if you'd like to look up information on a private social network. You can also, if you want to talk to us about a private social network, feel free to reply to any of the pre or post emails that go out about the webinar. We will be sending a follow-up email to everybody with a link to the recorded version and also a link to a copy of the slides. And you can simply reply to that if you would like to talk with us about the private social network any further. So I am going to turn it over. We've got a few minutes. Mike, let's see if we can maybe answer just a couple of questions.
Sure thing. So the first question is with regard to the management of a private social network. So this came in. Typically, how big of a staff and what type of people that you have on staff full-time, above and beyond the student ambassadors, are needed to manage a private social network? Does it depend on the size of the school? And this person goes on to say that she's from a larger public institution with many different programs and several campuses.
All right, Braylyn, do you want to talk about your experience on that one?
Sure. So being a smaller school with only 1,400 undergrad students, I myself am really the only full-time Franklin Pierce member who manages the team. I obviously have a liaison staff member to help me with the more fundamental pieces, you know, putting up maybe links to certain things. So for us, it's really easily managed. And like I said, it's a lot into the students. They're on really throughout the day, just checking it like they would any of their other social media, you know, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. They're checking, responding back quickly. And for me, there's very little management. I just kind of observe and make sure that the conversations are, you know, geared to the right topics, and I'm there for support for any of my student ambassadors who may have a question that they would like some advice before they answer. But for our size school, it's very easily managed with one full-time staff member. For a larger school, it may require maybe one, at the most, two other full-time staff members to kind of assist and monitor that process.
That would make sense, but you can definitely see from managing this size, if you just imagine it bigger with multiple campuses, there's just going to be different segments and different groups within the private social network. And so I think it's definitely possible. And you got to get that right model in there with getting the student ambassadors in there running it.
Another question came in. Are you adding students to the private social network as soon as they get accepted?
For Franklin Pierce, if they've been accepted before January, then they're sent their acceptance letter, and then once we launch the Perch in January, they're sent additional information. After the January launch date, any accepted student also receives information about the Perch as soon as they've been accepted.
You don't put people in; they get an invitation, and then they go and put themselves in. Is that correct?
Correct. It's not mandatory. We really want it to be voluntary. So they're actually sent their logon credentials. So they have to go and actively, you know, register and log in based on their Pearl. And we've helped students do that after meetings with an admissions counselor after their tours. If they haven't set it up, sometimes we can sit down with them and get them registered on the Perch.
Great. Another question, after students enroll, are they pushed to university social networks? Do these class pages stay open after enrollment?
So the Perch is really for those first time, those matriculating students coming from the accepted to the enrolled stage. So like I said, we will run it through the first week of freshman orientation, just so that they feel comfortable. And then from there, they're encouraged to connect and reach out through other social media you know, outlets. But in addition, like Megan mentioned, she is a peer leader, they will have their peer groups. So hopefully any questions or follow-up can be done with their peer group. Obviously, all of our student ambassadors are current students, so they're able to meet with these students one-on-one. So we don't necessarily transition them to a different private social network, but we hope that they will, you know, continue to stay active and involved with Franklin Pierce on their other media sites.
Got it. Okay. This is a question that actually came up earlier in the webinar when we were, discussing the different stages where a private social network would apply, specifically in the admitted and confirmed stages. Have you considered applying a private social network to any other stage, say the earlier stages, and are there shortcomings or benefits of doing so?
We have considered, starting a private social network earlier, but what we found is that in the fall of their senior year, they're still applying to a lot of schools. They haven't really started narrowing down their search yet, and there's not as many accepted students being rolling admissions. We see a lot of applicants in the winter and even in the spring. So for us, it really is a great way to reach out to those students in the winter and in the spring, when maybe at that point they've already heard back from all their colleges and now they're kind of in the decision-making process. So this is a different and unique way for us to reach out that maybe other schools aren't utilizing. So for us, we do see that high success rate. The Perch for us is carrying them from that winter time through the spring and through the summer so that they don't feel that they haven't heard from us. It's a way for us to stay connected to them after they've been sent their acceptance letters and other information.
Got it. A few questions have come in kind of related to this. One question that came in, do you have any opinion on how this tool will be used to assist a financial aid office? But related to this, there are some questions coming in about using the private social network to connect accepted students with different groups like that, financial aid, faculty, staff, etc. Is there any upside or downside to doing so?
I think there could be an upside to connecting them to those other departments that are going to be really crucial in their time here. But for us, what we found is that they have all these other ways of connecting to those offices, whether it's physically on campus once they've started their orientation process, or through email or through phone. Social media, they really want it to be just them. They just want it to be students. They don't want, this adult interaction necessarily on this type of site, maybe in other forms of social media. But like I said previously, it's really about this being only for accepted students to Franklin Pierce University, only student ambassadors, current students that are going to be on this website. And I think what we talked about students in this new generation coming up, they don't want to be heavily monitored by, authority figures or whatever that might be. So for us, we don't necessarily are planning to utilize it in that way, simply because the students get so much enjoyment out of connecting with their peers on this level that we don't want to muddy the water with, the professional faculty and staff getting involved as well.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think, Braylon, you're onto something there, and I think that part of why the PSN is so successful for Franklin Pierce is because you've really made an effort to keep it student focused and keep students in. And I remember that from talking, with your predecessor as well. So I think you're right. There's other forums to connect with other groups, because I think as soon as they feel like there's administrators on the site, they might be more inhibited to share and connect with one another.
Right,
So.
and that's the whole point, is we want them to open up and be excited about this next stage, and hopefully help ease some of their anxiety, and the students are the best ones for that job.
Yep. They need to connect with their peers, and it's about connecting and making friends, who will be their peer group, and to impact the yield, their comfort level of going to school there. So, Mike, how about if we do one more question, and then we can wrap up?
Sure thing. Question came in. You mentioned you start sending invitations in January. Have you started connecting in the fall as students are accepted early?
So we will, in the fall, we're more talking about, next visitations. Obviously, completing their application, and at that point we're still in those first stages. So we haven't really talked too much about the Perch. We may, mention it, in January once we'll launch a social media site where you can connect with other Franklin Pierce accepted students. But for us, we don't start building the hype, I would say, until December, and launching it in January. Those students that are applying in early fall, they're applying to a lot of schools, and they're definitely our proactive students, so we will see them return back and come on the Perch. But for us, for a student who applies in, October, we want to reach, we don't want to start them on the Perch yet. We want to reach back out in January, kind of as a, we haven't forgotten you, you're still really important on our list, and these are the ways we're trying to maintain that connection throughout their senior year.
Right. I like that you get some bang around the launch then too. You sort of build up that anticipation and reach back out, and then you have critical mass. So hopefully when you open it, there's a lot of activity on it, so it's not a quiet site.
Exactly. That's a big part of it too. We don't want it to, be a site with only 50 students on it because we launched it in October. We want it to, be impactful for them.
Absolutely, absolutely. One other question that I think I know we had it last year too is around the ambassadors. In terms of compensation, and I think if I remember correctly, you guys do have a compensation plan for your ambassadors. Is that correct? For the Perch, most of our students are already our paid students, whether they're telecounselors or tour guides or student assistants. The way we've run it in the past is that, whenever, if they are, working in admissions and they have the opportunity to be on the Perch because there's no pertinent work needing to be done, they can. But, what we find is that these students are answering questions, when they're just hanging out, when they're watching TV, they'll be on the Perch and they'll answer a quick question here or there. And it's really, I think, speaks to the level of our student ambassadors that they are just, that's what they do. They're peer leaders, and it's not when they're in the office, it's 24/7. So for us, it's our students that are really just active and involved in the Franklin Pierce community, and they continue to do that even with our potential students. Right. Fantastic. Well, we are at the top of the hour, and again, Braylin and Megan, thank you so much for taking time to share your experiences today with the Perch. Mike, thank you for being on to kind of facilitate the logistics and the questions. Again, we invite anyone in the audience to go to myviewbookdemo.com or reply to an email if you would like more information. And good luck with your recruiting. Have a great afternoon, everybody.